Agony becomes bliss. An LSZ trip report by Zarathustra. Posted to earwid.org June 24th, 2018. A few days ago, I finally got to experience that psychedelic experience that I'd always dreamed of. LSD. I've had a great deal of experience with psychedelics in the past. Psilocybin, 2CI, 25B, salvia, and something else which was most likely another phenethylamine. I have never been able to procure real LSD, but I was able to acquire a small quantity of LSZ through an online vendor. Based on the information I've gathered, LSZ is almost identical to LSD in its effects, although I'm sure opinions will differ on this matter. Anyway, on Tuesday, I received an envelope in the mail. My grandmother delivers it to me saying, "It's airmail." And later on, I'll be forced to make up a haphazard excuse as to why I'm receiving an envelope from the UK. I waste no time revealing its contents. A folded piece of paper simply reads, "Thank you for doing business with blank." A small sealed silver bag is inside. On it is written LSZ, D-lysergic acid 2,4-dimethylacetatide, 3 times 150 micrograms, not for human consumption. Oh yes, very official indeed. Immediately, I feel the butterflies, an anxious excitement in my belly that makes me feel like taking a dump. This always happens before I get ready to trip. I dispose of the envelope and put the sealed bag away in a safe place. Thursday. It's about 12 PM, and I've decided to trip during the daytime. Besides painstakingly creating an epic playlist and loading it on my iPod, I've done very little in preparation for this trip. All I've had to eat was a few eggs earlier in the morning. I figure that I have to set aside about 8 hours for this trip, and I don't want to stay up all night. My mother is due back from work around 7 or 8, so it's now or never. Of course, my grandparents are still home, but they don't usually bother me. I make myself some fire water and chug it down to get my blood flowing. And for those who don't know fire water, it is raw apple cider vinegar, hot water, cayenne pepper, sea salt, and a little lemon juice. Tastes like soup broth, but it really gives me a nice boost of energy. At T+0 hours, I open the sealed package to reveal 3 blotters with LSC stamped all over them. Super official, I think to myself. I take 2 of the blotters, stick them under my tongue, and wrap the other one up in some tinfoil. T+45 minutes. I haven't had any body tension yet. I actually feel completely normal. I'm starting to get a bit skeptical. I know I've never taken anything precisely like this before, but I'm typically very good at noticing the stages of the come-up. I wonder if I didn't take it the right way, or if the LSZ was destroyed by heat on the long trip overseas. I do a little bit of internet research, and read that for some, it can take up to an hour and a half to kick in. I feel reassured, so I just do a little bit of chatting with friends on Facebook while I wait. At T+1 hour and 30 minutes, I'm still feeling none of the body tension that I'm accustomed to with a come-up. I am, however, starting to realise that I'm definitely under the influence of something. Things just feel different. I know that it's happening, but I'm worried that maybe it won't be all that spectacular. I decide that maybe it's time to test the waters. I grab my iPod and my headphones and step out on the back porch to have a cigarette. I put on Cold War Kids, Out of the Wilderness, and light up. We live on a golf course and my backyard is overlooking one of the holes. It's all very green with lots of oak trees. The music hits my ears and a wave of pleasure washes over me. I notice that things look especially bright, especially green, and especially beautiful. I looked up at the sky, and from behind a tall oak tree flew a flock of birds. I smiled and laughed to myself. The moment was too perfect. It was right then that I knew I was tripping. I went back inside and immediately realised it was far too hot. I was in the patio, which is where I stay. So, I took my laptop and moved into my mum's room, which would be nice and air-conditioned. At T+2 hours, I've now put on the playlist which I so painstakingly made in preparation, and it's really doing the trick. I'm completely at a loss as to what to do with myself though. I'm sitting on my laptop, and it seems like everyone wants to chat with me today of all days. And now I've got this girl messaging me saying she wants to fuck me. I'm definitely interested, but now isn't really a good time. I casually flirt with her for a little while, but eventually I decide to log out. My mind is in a different place, and I don't want to have to deal with the demands of keeping up the sexual tension that was going on. T plus 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'm sitting outside on my mother's patio, smoking a cigarette, and I'm starting to notice some visual distortion. My clothing is beginning to breathe, and the computer screen is starting to get that melting effect. I still have music pumping into my head, but now I'm mentally distracted. I'm starting to feel very restless and uncomfortable. I go inside to do something, but as soon as I get inside, I forget what it was I was going to do. My body feels fine, but mentally I'm starting to feel anxious. I'm starting to think about things, about my life and my current circumstances. I'm thinking that I'm a complete loser, and I have no business tripping on a Thursday afternoon. I'm thinking about how I'm currently unemployed and having a hell of a time finding a job. Of course, all the while, I'm trying my best to not think about these things. I just want to enjoy my trip, but I cannot shake these thoughts. I have nothing to distract myself with. The music is giving me the auditory pleasure I wanted, yet I am still experiencing this mental anguish. Do you like your trippy music? The music seems to be taunting me. I'm actually starting to regret taking the LSZ entirely. T plus 3 hours and I'm now sitting on the bed enduring the mental agony. All of a sudden I realise that I shouldn't be trying to avoid these thoughts, that instead I should be examining them. I realise that I am actually very depressed and pretending that I'm not. I begin to think about why I'm feeling like this, and I start to think back to my college years. I fucked up in college. I partied my ass off and ended up not graduating. I've been coasting along ever since, working different jobs, and realised that I never mourned for this properly, that I simply continued to live my life and pretended like nothing bad had ever happened. It was then that I began to cry, and I cried hard. I cried for the opportunities I threw away. I cried for the mistakes that I made. You fucked up bad, but it's gonna be alright. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay, I said to myself. I never cry, and now I was crying like I've never cried before. I felt like I was releasing years of bottled up emotion. When I cried, all the tears that I could, I felt this incredible sense of joy wash over me. I began to laugh, and I felt like I was reborn. At T plus 3 hours and 30 minutes, I'm feeling much better now. I notice on the television Robin Big is on, and in this episode it looks like he's bought his family a house and is showing them around. It's like a total reality check to me. I'm seeing that there is this man who has totally provided for his family. They even had a fucking camel walking around in the backyard. Like it was really driving home the point that he has won the game, and this is what winning is. I'm thinking, this is what people are watching on TV? Human beings parading around like gorillas beating their chests? Is this what the purpose of human existence is? It felt very nihilistic and amusing, and also felt liberating, in a do what thou wilt sort of way. However, at the same time, it didn't feel right. I felt like I was being deceived by this notion that there was more to life, and I was being tricked into believing that this game was all there was. At T plus 3 hours and 45 minutes, I'm still feeling a little crusty from all the crying earlier, so I decided to take a quick shower. Nothing really special about the shower. I'm not noticing any amazing feelings or hallucinations, just a standard shower. At this point, the trip is still almost completely mental. I'm still thinking about what I saw on TV and how I felt about it. I sat down on the toilet and started thinking about it. I started thinking about how I could turn my life around. Then I start thinking about my health. I use smokeless tobacco, and I take a lot of drugs. I actually think of myself as an old man, suffering and regretting all of these poor decisions made in youth. I decide right then and there that today will be the day that I stop all of these things. A wave of emotion washes over me and tears begin to fall down my face. I'm looking down at the wet bathroom floor and I say out loud, "There is a God and he loves me." It was at the precise moment that I began to see the most beautiful and clear visuals that I've ever seen. It was just like the visuals I always see when I'm on a strong psychedelic. The intricate geometric patterns that spread across entire surfaces in a honeycomb-like fashion. It was the same as before, yet so much clearer and more intricate in its detail. By that, I mean the individual honeycombs were much smaller. I had to laugh at this and I felt total bliss at that very moment. At T plus 4 hours and 30 minutes, I've clothed myself and I'm now laid on the bed looking at the ceiling. It's one of those popcorn ceilings, and I focus on one section of it. It begins breaking out in that same, beautiful geometric pattern that I am so accustomed to. I look at the intricacy of it with wonder. The small moving parts of it sometimes appear like tiny gears turning against each other. I find it almost impossible to describe, and I am a terrible artist, but I have seen Shipibo artwork that looks quite similar. The pattern soon encompasses the entire ceiling, and now it is moving at a furious rate. I look at the ceiling through the spinning fan, and this causes the room to be slightly illuminated by what seem to be very faint, translucent pyramids within cubes. I have seen this effect in much greater intensity on other psychedelics before, but this time it is only slightly apparent. I spend about half an hour watching the beauty unfold before my eyes, and the feeling is absolutely blissful. At 5 hours, I'm starting to feel hungry, so go into the kitchen to make some food. I seem to be able to turn the visuals off and on at will. All I need to do to see them is focus, and to turn them off, I simply focus on something else. I make myself a ridiculously huge hamburger with bacon on it. I take it back to my room and wolf it down. After eating the burger, I feel even more amazing. This is, without a doubt, the best I've ever felt on a psychedelic. At 7 hours, I've lost track of time, enjoying the visuals and talking with friends online. My buddy is coming over to pick me up and drive around for a minute. At T plus 7 hours and 15 minutes, my buddy picks me up and we drive to the gas station. I give him almost all of my cigarettes and tell him that I've decided to quit. We talk for a little bit, and then he drives me back home. At T plus 8 hours, I've moved my laptop and everything back out to my room, and my mom finally gets home. I'm still seeing a lot of great visuals, but the trip is totally under my control. I feel very comfortable talking with my mother. At 10 hours, at this point, I've been under the assumption that I was completely done tripping, but I decide to give the visuals a try again. I look up at the ceiling and focus just a little bit, and I realise that I'm still seeing the visuals full on. This is a very interesting trip. At 12 hours, I take a look at the surface of my laptop and I focus a little bit. The visuals are still there, and I look at the ceiling and the visuals are still there. At 14 hours, I'm getting ready to wind down and go to bed, but I realise that I'm still wide awake. Going to sleep is going to be tricky. I decide to take another look at that surface on my laptop, and yet again, the visuals are still there. I lay back and take a look at the ceiling. The whole ceiling is still plastered with that honeycomb pattern. Looking at it through this fan enhances this effect. I can see the breathing effect when I move my eyes a bit, and I'm astonished that I'm still seeing the visuals so clearly. At 16 hours, it's now 4 in the morning, and I dropped the LSZ at 12 in noon. The ceiling still has the imprint of the honeycomb pattern. If I focus a little, I can still see this honeycomb pattern on my laptop. I notice the moon through my blinds, and I decide to take a walk to check it out. I put on my headphones and the musical magic is still very much there. I walk out onto the golf course to watch the moon creep behind a large column of dark clouds. It's beautiful. At 16 hours and 30 minutes, I'm finally going to bed. But before I do, I check the ceiling, and it still has that imprint. Focus on the laptop. Now the visuals are getting very faint, but the pattern is still present. I start to think that maybe I'll be able to see this pattern forever if I just focus hard enough. Waking up the next day, I realise that the ceiling looks completely different now. There is no pattern, and no amount of focusing will change that. I am forever changed by this trip. I'm motivated and I no longer feel depressed. I've quit smoking and dipping. I've stopped drinking soda. I've definitely had some troubling thoughts on psychedelics before that went away rather quickly, but this was the first time I was unable to avoid them, which resulted in me examining and immersing myself in them. The experience was incredibly rewarding. The feeling of bliss I experienced was like no other. I'm still astonished that the effect of this trip lasted for so long. It wasn't a very powerful trip, but it did have an extremely long duration. 300 micrograms was a good dose, but I definitely could have done more. An interesting little look into LSZ. I can't even tell you how much I wanted to say LSZ, but to appease my American audience, I decided to give in and pronounce it LSZ. Lysergic acid 2,4-dimethylacetatide, also known as lambda and LSZ, is a synthetic psychedelic of the lysergamide chemical class, which produces LSD-like psychedelic effects when administered. All this information is coming from psychonautwiki.org, by the way. I'd be lost without them. In the 2000s, a team led by David E. Nichols at Purdue University set to develop a rigid analogue of LSD with the diethylamide group constrained into an acetidine ring in order to map the binding site at the 5-HT2A receptor. For anyone who doesn't know what an LSD analogue is, basically there's several analogues of LSD, which in layman's terms means just a derivative of acid, where they fiddle with the chemical compounds, but they still have similar structures and effects, but there can be slight differences between them. The first time I ever actually took LSD, or had the LSD trip, it was on 1P LSD, and I've also tried 1V LSD before, and there's certain differences between them in terms of geometric visuals, mental feeling, body load. Very slight, but so slight that you couldn't consider it a completely different substance. It is very much a derivative of the LSD experience. Other LSD analogues include ALD52, ETH, LAD. I guess in a sense you could compare taking LSD or 1P LSD or 1V LSD to the way people treat taking 4-ACO-DMT and shrooms. 4-ACO-DMT being psilocybin, I believe, off the top of my memory, which is structurally similar to psilocybin. Anyone who has better knowledge of chemistry, please correct me if I'm getting this wrong off the back of my own head while I'm talking on a whim right now. But even so, in my own experience, and for many people, but this isn't a general rule of thumb, these derivatives of a substance, say like 4-ACO-DMT, is sort of like a derivative experience of a classic shroom trip. They have so many similarities that you could almost lump them in together with each other. My 4-ACO-DMT trips have been completely different to my psilocybin experiences, and to be honest, my 1P LSD experiences have been vastly different to when I've ever partaken in the old LSD-25, the classic chemical, the actual LSD that we talk about when we refer to acid. Getting back to psychonautwiki.org, LSZ has little to no history of human usage prior to 2012, when it appeared on some research chemical markets in the UK. LSZ later gained, to be fair, I'm going to start calling it LSZ because it originated in the UK. Big up the nationalism. LSZ later gained international popularity through a small cluster of mail-order novel psychedelic shops that appeared in 2012. There have also been several unconfirmed reports of LSZ being synthesized in illicit laboratories and distributed on blotter paper or in liquid solution under names such as diazidine and lambda. LSZ, I said it again, LSZ is not considered to be addictive or physiologically toxic, but nevertheless, adverse psychological reactions such as severe anxiety, paranoia, and psychosis are always possible, particularly among those predisposed to mental illness. It is highly advised to use harm reduction practices if using this substance. Not much else to comment on really here. I just find it fascinating how many different chemicals there are and how many different slight variations a chemist can actually manipulate on a chemical level to create an analog or a semi-similar synthetic psychedelic to a naturally occurring one. Or it boggles my mind. I was never good at chemistry in school, but absolutely fascinated by the effects of chemicals on the brain. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that for a fact, my son. But yeah, if you've ever taken LSZ, what was it like for you? What was awesome about this Irwin experience was that he went through a very classic psychedelic experience where he seemed to work through a lot of trauma and did a lot of shadow work. This was a great example of a trip report that showcases shadow work in a psychedelic trip. I might make a dedicated video for that, doing shadow work, working through the Jungian idea of the shadow, the repressed self, the repressed parts of your psyche that you push back into the abyss and that needs to be processed and integrated in order to achieve, to activate the next part of your life, really, to become a new you, to metamorphosize. That's why psychedelics are so unbelievably effective in therapy, because they allow people to go really deep within and face the trauma, and it can be very cathartic and also uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to face yourself 100%, but it's also cathartic to cry and release this bottled up energy and baggage that you've been holding with you. You're gonna carry that weight, space cowboy. All the baggage that you carry with you throughout your day-to-day life that stems from experiences and events that you've been through and that you don't really register as having an effect on your mind, your inner child and all this. And psychedelics really just get to the root of that if you allow them to. Sometimes they will literally just do it. Like if you take a high enough dose of a psychedelic, say like LSD, and this is where a lot of the dark, scary trip reports come from. I mean, how many times have we seen that there's a through line between a lot of them where people go into these experiences with immense levels of hubris and they're like, I've got absolutely nothing wrong with me, I'm fucking sound, I'm completely sorted, got no psychological issues whatsoever, I'm just going to take 10 tabs because I'm the hardest, most veteran psychonaut out there on the block. Nobody can stop me. But yes, someone can stop you. Is yourself ends up stopping you, because you have to face yourself, because you take so much of this substance, you can't ignore what's lurking in the dark anymore, and then you have to face it, and you can face it in the most visceral and quite disturbing way possible. And it really shatters your ego. It shatters your ego, doesn't it? It'll shatter your ego in a more extreme fashion the higher dose of a psychedelic you take. And a lot of the times when people take them, it's not because they're interested in higher dose experiences and going beyond the pale per se. It's because you look at them, so many of them I've shared, most of them are just literally just people being like, I'm just going to take 10 tabs and see what the fuck happens, why not? Because I've just done all these substances before, I'm completely fine, nothing can hurt me, I've got nothing to address. And then it will bring out stuff that you have no idea that you even feared or had anything you needed to work through within yourself. And we all have stuff we have to work through within ourselves, otherwise there will be no growth going on. And if you do, I mean, the mind is so effective at repressing its own bullshittery, if you will, that you can just remain in a stasis, stagnant state. And for some people, they stay like that for decades. But for those of us who are into, I don't know, consciousness work and personal development and going beyond the mind and beyond just whatever situation you're in now, wanting to grow as a being, you are going to have to go within and face things that are tethering you to your current state, or keeping you in this homeostasis sort of level, when you want the pendulum to be swinging towards change rather than staying in the middle between, oh, I'm changing a little bit but then I'm regressing, etc. That's what I do a lot, is like, oh, I'll change loads of stuff and then I'll regress, and then I'll just stay in like this middle zone. And this is where you need to start making like drastic changes in your life to really bring about actual change, or else you will just be running around like a hamster on a wheel, dosed up with a bit of LSZ. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this trip report and the commentary section. If you didn't, then, well, I can't really do much about that. And hope you all had a good night, sweet dreams, and I'll see you on the other side.